Hello, everybody. Welcome. My name is Lee Nemo. I'm the head of online at Screen Australia. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we live and work. And I'd like to, that's wherever you're zooming in from today, of course, because we're all over this country. I'd like to pay my respects to the elders past and present and acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded, always was, always will be Aboriginal land. Well, hi, thanks for joining us. This is the official webinar for Digital Originals 3, which is, as it says on the tin, the third time that we've run this initiative, and really happy to be here today to talk to you a bit about the initiative itself, the history of it, and what we're looking for as applications are open right now. So before we get into all of that, I'm going to throw to my colleagues who are joining me today to introduce themselves. So I will throw to you, Lawani.
Hi all, my name is Lawani Arman, and I very recently joined SBS as commissioning editor of Scripted, where I work across development and production of scripted content across SBS channels and platforms. Over to you, Caius.
Hi everybody, my name's Caius Hepworth. I'm the head of commissioning and programming at NITV, which is the National Indigenous Broadcaster, and really excited about talking to you about the opportunity of applying for this initiative.
Fantastic, thank you both, and thank you so much for joining today. Also, this session is being signed by interpreters from Auslan Stage Left. Thank you to those for joining us today. I'm going to start with a little bit of history on Digital Originals. We'll talk about, what we're looking for, the process, the workshop, and the application system from here. Feel free to throw questions in the chat. I would ask if you do have a question, just direct it to me if possible, and that way I'll be able to filter and moderate questions as we go. But we'll be answering questions at the end, so maybe hold off on those for another 5 or 10 minutes, and hoping that this whole thing will go for about half an hour. It is being recorded. It will be up on the Digital Originals guidelines page on the Screen Australia website, and I can chuck a link for that in the chat later on as well. So this initiative has run twice before, and that, as I said, applications are open now. They're going to close on the 24th of February, so you've got a couple of weeks after this session to go and get your applications in order. It is aimed at historically excluded or underrepresented creatives in the screen sector, and is seen as, I guess, an entry point into working with the likes of Screen Australia, SBS and NITV, and aimed at people with potentially a little bit of experience, but also there's not a need for experience, particularly on the writing side of things. So the first time this initiative ran, we held a workshop in person. We had 2 projects that have come out of that. One of those has hit your screens already, Iggy and Ace. Hopefully you've all watched that, but that's on SBS On Demand now if you haven't. And then another project in post-production at the moment, A Beginner's Guide to Grief, which will be hitting your screens later this year. And I guess the impetus for this initiative was to create more projects in the style of some excellent short form content on SBS On Demand, Homecoming Queens, Robbie Hood, The Tailings, to produce more of those projects and upskill more of those creators and tell more of those stories. The initiative ran again last year. For obvious reasons, we ran the workshop remotely, but we have 3 fantastic projects out of that that are currently in kind of contracting and gearing up into pre-production to shoot very soon. So that gives you a sense of the timeline. The workshop was May last year, and those projects are going to be shooting in the next couple of months. So it's a pretty compressed timeline to get those projects from development onto screen. That's the kind of general structure of it. We run a workshop with 10 teams. We take 4 of those through for development funding, and then we take up to 3 of those through for production funding and commissioning. That's obviously all in the guidelines, but the kind of stuff that isn't in the guidelines is what I want to go to now. I'm going to throw to you both, Lawani and Caius, to, I guess, unpack the question, what are SBS, NITV and Screen Australia looking for in applications to Digital Originals?
Yeah, sure. So for Digital Originals, I'd say SBS is really interested in that boldness of vision, and we don't want you to play it safe with Digital Originals. There's a really hot tip. Don't play it safe. Be brave in the stories that you put forward, and in work, in short form work, I think, but also in this particular initiative with that really structured development and production pipeline with a lot of support along the way. I think you can really afford to come in with the boldest, most confident, most innovative, distinctive idea that you've got. So again, be really brave in the stories that you pitch. But we also just want really great stories told with a very authentic voice, and a story that can find an audience on our on-demand platform. And so stories that have, really good structure behind them, a really good hook that grabs us from the start, a good emotional dilemma at the heart of the story with nuanced characters that have a clear goal and go through a journey, and in the pursuit of that goal change. And I don't know, I mean, for me personally, what I'm always looking for in any content is a story where I can feel a really clear voice behind it. And to me, that voice comes through when you have a story that you're really burning to tell, and you are the person, the best person to tell that story, and to tell that story now. So it has lots of that why now resonance. So that's really about bringing you into the picture. We want to know who you are through the story that you're telling, but through the worlds that you're speaking to, the communities that you're drawing from, stories that are coming from your lived experience. They have that real authenticity of voice behind them. And of course, we also need stories that reflect the SBS Charter. So they are at their heart, richly diverse and about richly diverse worlds.
Fantastic. Thanks, Lawani. Kais.
Yes, I'm going to jump off the back of that. And there's going to be a lot of people, a lot of interest for this. And so the question is, how do you cut through? You can be inspired by, but essentially we want to know you. Why is your perspective in this world, the language that you're choosing to give these characters? And you'll know the zeitgeist of your own community. And we love it when somebody applies and they realize, well, this hasn't been represented this way. And here's an opportunity to show this world, sit it inside a genre which may be unexpected. Let's just say musical, well-known. Let's just say, I'll go there. I'm not saying this is all we want to see, but I'm just saying horror, and really stretch and play. We want to be surprised by what we see, but again, going off what Lawani was saying, we want to hear your voice. And which is uniquely yours, but realizing what's the format we're doing it in. We'll be able to see your craft by what you submit, and part of that is just having characters who we would be excited to see. And I just want to really, really encourage to listen to this and take the opportunity to go. Don't count yourself out. Don't think that you're not experienced enough. Look at who's gotten through, take the time to see what excites you and interests you, but then also see, wow, I have a different take on that, and I want to take this opportunity and really develop further if you progress into the workshop. That's me, Lee.
No, great.
I think that just to tag on the end of that, Kaya, is that authenticity and specificity of voice. I'm hesitant to say don't do anything we've done before, because if you are coming in with real clarity of your voice and your experience, your story is going to be distinct. And I would recommend looking across the suite of productions that we've made through Digital Originals. And if you do have something that sits in a similar territory, just be clear on how are you different as the storyteller behind that story. Because if you do that, then your story will always be distinct, and from others. It will have that authenticity that we're both in speaking to.
Yeah, fantastic. I would say something that you mentioned, Kais, around genre as well. We've done thrillers, mystery, horror, a lot of comedy, dramedy kind of stuff, anthology. So bring us something that potentially we haven't seen before. What kind of genres are we able to expand the repertoire of Digital Originals into? To jump back to a bit more of the admin side, which is the exciting part, just to clarify around the workshop and the process from here, we take teams of either 2 or 3 through to that workshop. Look, in all honesty, we would love to hold that workshop in person, and that's a part of why we keep a cap on the number of people in the workshop. At this point, it is still unknown whether that will be in person or virtually, but obviously if you're successful for the workshop, we'll let you know. However, your team can be bigger than that 2 or 3, but just know that only a maximum of 3 will be able to attend the workshop. So we appreciate that some teams are coming to this initiative already formed or bigger than that 2 or 3 amount. You do need to have at least one writer on the team. However, you don't need a director or producer. You need at least one of those other roles covered at time of applying. But should you be successful in getting through to the development stage, that's when we would look at expanding that team to make sure the roles of writer, director, and producer are covered for development, because obviously we do want to move you pretty quickly through into production.
And I'll just jump in here. For NITV specifically, when we commission, we have a 2 out of 3 of the key creatives are to be First Nations. So for this particular initiative, that would definitely be a writer. And then as it progresses, we'd be looking to get the director, or it could be a producer on the project. So I just wanted to put that out to the teams. But it doesn't mean that you can't be a First Nations creative and just be in a beautiful eclectic mix. But when we further progress, when we commission, we look for the 2 out of 3, so they would need to be First Nations.
Absolutely. And I'm just getting some questions through that I might just address around, I guess, that definition of underrepresented or historically excluded, which is in the guidelines. So a panelist L has asked the question around, being queer but being white. Part of the definition of underrepresented, which is in the guidelines, I'll just read it out here so that it's covered. The initiative is designed to support screen creatives currently underrepresented, including people who identify as culturally and linguistically diverse, First Nations Australians, people with disability, female and gender diverse, LGBTIQ+, and those who are located in regional and remote areas. So that you're absolutely eligible, Elle, and that expands. My keyboard has stopped working. Great. So hopefully that answers your question. But as Kai said, that does slightly differ when we're talking about NITV projects. Luani, I want to throw to you for a minute to talk about the kind of format and the budget of the projects that we're looking for, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. So the format of the 6x10 is locked, and that works to the budgets that we've been working with. We can't be super specific with the numbers, but it is around that $1 million mark. So just having a think about that when you are crafting your series. But on format for me, I guess the question I'd be really asking about the stories that you're looking at for that particular format. Does your story fit that 6x10? So stress test your ideas. It's not is it a short film idea that you're trying to stretch out to a 6x10, in which case it probably won't work? Is it a feature film or a TV series idea that you're trying to cram into a shorter form format? Because that won't work either. So we really are looking for stories that fit that form and that short form series content, and that can be episodic or that can be serialized, and again of any genre. But I mean, like a couple of key things that we'd be looking for within that is, does it have a really good hook? Is there a really strong, inciting incident that comes at the start of those stories? Is there always the potential within your idea for every episode to give us a question or a cliffhanger or leave us hanging at the end of the episode so that we want to come back for that next ep? Or just binge it all at once. Like, give us all of that juicy binge-worthy content. Like, that's what we're looking for within this format. And if you're unsure, because it's a tricky thing to determine how much story can actually fit into a short form series, I'd really recommend looking back at the suite of projects that we've done. Look at Robbie Hood and look at how much content, look at how there was a story told every episode, but there was still a hook to bring us back each and every episode. And I think the best study that you can do if you are applying is to really, really, really interrogate how those projects have been put together. So a self-contained, the other thing is a non-returnable series. We are looking for self-contained stories that do fit that 6x10. And that's really designed for this initiative to be a launching pad for your career to go on and do other things. So non-returnable, self-contained, it's your business card for the next step in your career.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Luani. I'd add as well, just on a money side of things, just so that you're aware, the budgets for these projects are up to $1 million per project. That might sound like a lot, but that does start to go really, really quickly when you're paying everybody at least award minimum rates. So bear that in mind. Something set with a cast of 30 returning characters on a space station with huge special effects is probably out of the realms of possibility in terms of budget. So think about how you're going to contain that budget. And to points we've made earlier, looking at the other projects that we've previously funded that are available on SBS On Demand, that's a kind of similar budget range. So you get a sense of how many characters are on screen at any one time, whose stories these are that are being told, that, the scope and scale of these stories. Caius, can I throw to you to chat about kind of some more application specifics around, time limits and what we're looking for in terms of what stage projects are at?
Great. And so this is essentially an opportunity for, it's a writing initiative. We're going to bring in fabulous specialists and mentors to come in, and you all get to move from that initial idea, concept, early stage, and then move forward. So we're not looking for something which is already in its second draft, first draft. We're really looking for something which is then able to be open to getting influenced by what occurs in the workshop and hearing and getting guidance, and then being inspired then to springboard and go into that development phase. So I know it's really tough where you're going, but I really want to show you how good the concept is and how great it is. But this actual workshop is about coming with, this is what I haven't seen there, this is what I see the potential. So it is that early development. It's not when it's already, and I use the term, already cooked, where it is, and where you might, and rightly so as creatives, be protective and go, I'm not going to be open to being guided and experience what the workshop is, because there is something about the participants, the peer-to-peer sharing, and it is really a collaborative workshop where other people are growing and going off and taking hold of ideas. It helps you go, wow, well, I saw that, well, then I can add this craft element into my own, and go and be open to taking the narrative somewhere else, which could actually just amplify it. Was that too much, Lee, or in the realm of what you're after?
Perfect. Thank you. Is there anything you wanted to add, Lawani or Caius, before we jump into answering some of the questions?
Yeah, just as part of the application, you just on the back of what Caius was saying about coming in with an idea that isn't fully developed. So as part of the application, you do need to submit a writing sample that is distinct from the idea that you want to take into Digital Originals. And so with that writing sample, because it is from a different project, or it's a different story, I just recommend that, and this isn't a hard and fast rule, but I would recommend that it's in a similar tone or style or genre as to the story that you're hoping to take through Digital Originals. And just so we can see whether you know how to handle a particular genre or form or style or character. It might be, you might have similar characters that you want to explore, so that could be a writing sample. And just the other thing that we'd be looking for within that is some sense of craft. And I don't want to put the frighteners on for anybody who is coming into this from a really emerging space, but do have a think about, do you have, I've touched on this already, but are there strong character arcs? Is there a sense of a plot that could drive us through that 10-minute sample, or at least, if it's 10 minutes of a longer form, at least give us a hint that there is good sort of story momentum? Are you good with dialogue? Like, what are your strengths as a writer? Like, show us that, as well as all the things we've been saying about authenticity of voice.
Thanks, Lawani. To add to that, obviously this initiative is open to people without credits as a writer. So that writing sample can be from a different medium or format: stage, prose, poetry, a novel, whatever that is that you've got experience in as a writer. Let's jump into some questions. I might ask some and answer, or throw to either or both of you. Can students apply? No, under Screen Australia's terms of trade, full-time students aren't eligible to be applicants on these projects. Obviously, that's around, you're needing to dedicate quite a bit of time to these once these projects go into production. Can you apply with a project that's been unsuccessful in the past? Yes. For reference, this is a really competitive initiative. We get a lot of applications. So sometimes something that might have been, declined on fine margins in previous rounds might make it through next round. So absolutely, I would add to that and say, we do encourage you to apply with, to be on a maximum of 2 applications. That's not a hard and fast rule, but we really want you to think about which stories do you want to tell, which project do you really want to take through to production. And that's the one that we want to partner with you on as well. So if you're on 5 or 6 or 7 different applications, you're actually competing against yourself a little bit as well, because it would be really rare for us to take 2 projects with the same key creative through to the workshop. So something to think about as you're, to be discerning about the kind of projects that you're attaching yourself to. I'm going to work through some more questions. I might throw to both of you to have a chat about the audience. We're getting a few questions about that. Is there anything that we can tell applicants about SBS and NITV's
we can
audience?
be really, really open with the audience. What we'd like to say is that we do have an SBS Warm Heartland audience, which spreads across many demographics. But what we're really interested in on demand, it's an opportunity. And we have varying age groups that come into that. And so it could be like 24 up to 51 who we've seen actually have come on board with these short forms. So the other joy within this is we're really, really interested in, because you can have your primary audience and your secondary audience. So for yourself as a creative, your primary audience may be your core community who you want to see and give a space for them to come in, but know that the secondary audience within the story allows others to view it. So nothing, look, we're not looking for children's, even though NITV does do children's. We really, really feel that it is broad, and yeah, I just wanted to put that out.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. But just to add that, I think when it comes to audience, as much as we're not zeroing in on any specific target with this, you should know who your audience is and what their viewing habits are, what stories are they drawn to, what kind of characters do they engage with. So I think if you're very clear about that, that would really help your application.
And I just saw a question about YA. YA is very current and fabulous. Interesting though, you have to look at sometimes YA does have really large budgets. So it just depends what genre you have within the YA demographic. But yes, we would be open to that. And going off the back, what Luani was saying is, if you know what the genre is and what the community and where you're going within the heart of your story, where are they consuming this content, and who are you actually creating this for? Like, you as the creators should know that and bring us on that, whilst being aware a lot of different folks come to SBS On Demand and SBS and NITV.
Thank you. I'm going to try and burn through some questions with maybe quite simple answers. If I submit the digital originals, am I still eligible to submit to other forms of Screen Australia funding, i.e. production funding for online? Absolutely. Can you submit an application for an animated series? You can. I would go back to that budget question. Animation is very expensive. How is that going to fit in with these kind of budgets at that 6x10 level? I think that would be a challenge, if I'm honest. Is there an opportunity to submit a draft application to someone prior to the due date? Unfortunately, no, we can't pre-assess applications. You just need to apply and we will assess from that point. Can we submit a maximum of 2 ideas? Yeah, look, that's our recommendation. You can be on more than 2 applications, but as I said, we'd like you to we'd recommend that you're on no more than 2, but that's not hard and fast. Can you apply with a project that is to be evolved from a short film? Yes, definitely. And I think that's a great evolution. We'd like to see projects that are, short film to a series.
But just putting out their IP, hopefully it's your short film?
Yes, and actually someone I asked about IP earlier, and let me just scroll up to that question. Who retains the rights or IP to the project if we submit, get into the workshop, go into scripting and development and complete production? Under Screen Australia's terms of trade, that IP retains with the production company, the producer. SBS pay a license fee and license a project, or SBS and NITV, I should say. Screen Australia give you a grant if you're successful. So I guess the only caveat I would say is, if you are successful in coming through to the workshop, but not successful into going into development funding. From the point of the workshop, there's a 6-month first and last rights look at that project. So if you're pitching it out elsewhere, SBS and NITV have a first and last rights for 6 months from that workshop. So that's essentially through till the end of this calendar year. I should throw some questions to you two. I'm hogging them all.
Doing a great job, Lee.
Audience, thank you. And we are going to aim to finish at 10:30, so we won't get through all of the questions, unfortunately. We'll try and get through as many as you can. I need to know about you need a producer attached. As I said earlier, you don't need a producer attached. You can apply as a writer and a director, as long as there's at least 2 members of your team. So that's covering another question as well. You do need to have at least 2 members of your team. You can't apply as a solo applicant. But should you get through to the development stage, that's when we'll talk about getting a producer on board for your project. Are you open to pure comedies, or are you more about dramedies? I'm going to throw that one to you two to answer.
I think in the on-demand space, you could lean into comedy, but I mean, I think comedy drama is probably more in the pocket of what we'd be interested in, just a comedy that's a little more grounded. So we wouldn't be looking for sketch, for instance. I don't think that would be of appeal. But if you had really good character development and the comedy came out of character, that's probably more in line with more in the ballpark of what we'd be interested in.
Yeah, fantastic. Can we submit the script of that short film? Yes, you can. Although I understand the script must be written in English, is there a possibility that your final screen work will be spoken in the original language with English subtitles?
Oh, we're very open to language. So again, there is no reason that we would stop that. And with SBS and NITV, languages and First Nation languages are much appreciated.
Great. There's a lot of questions here. Apologies if I'm not getting to yours, but if you do have questions that aren't answered that you need to know about, please email online@screenaustralia.gov.au. I might chuck that in the chat to everybody just so that everyone has that email address and we can answer any questions online@screenaustralia.gov.au. Great. Can part-time university students apply? And there was another question about, I know I talked about students earlier, but if one person on your team is a student, the applicant can't be a student, nor can the applicant company. So if there are students on your team, that's something that we can discuss. It doesn't count you out. Okay, I'm going to maybe try and find one more question because we're at 10:28 and then we will finish up. Anything that you can see in Lawani and Caius that you want to tackle?
It's all moving so fast.
Is Digital Originals the only avenue to submit short form to SBS?
Yeah, currently. And so if you do have a short form idea that you want developed and produced, this is the portal in which to come through. This is the pipeline for our short form digital content.
And with NITV, it's when we partner with other agencies and put out initiatives.
Actually, here's another one that we can get to quickly. Any restrictions or preferences for ratings, PG versus MA15+?
No, and we'll talk that through during the workshop. That was something that came up about pushing boundaries and edges and what can be achieved on screen, and so then we'll bring in the classifiers and we'll be able to so if we're asking for risk, we're asking for risk, but we'll also talk through what does that mean and how does that sit with codes. And
great. Some questions about finance plans. Some of these have been answered previously in the webinar, which has been recorded. So feel free to go back and watch from the start if you have missed some of it, but also around the makeup and the breakdown of that finance plan. That is something that we do work with you on should you be successful in going forward for production funding. So I guess that's a bit of we can put a pin in that and deal with that later around how we get to that roughly $1 million mark for these projects.
I just want to jump in there and say that at this stage, that's not what's going to limit you. So don't feel pressure that I have to own what the finance plan is at this stage, because that will be further discussed and worked following on from the workshop, and then where the what the scripts themselves call for.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you, Caius. Focus on the creative at this point. Lawani, Caius, anything you want to add finally before we finish up?
Just to encourage you that, and I know there are a lot of emerging creatives wanting to come into this space, and it can be really daunting. particularly if it's your first time applying for funding for anything. And I just want to encourage you to believe that it is possible, it is doable. And if you take that application step by step, and you know, Lee has shared the link. If you have questions, don't be afraid to ask them, because that's what that you know, that's the help that we're offering to help you navigate these applications. So I just really want to stress that I know it's daunting. I know it can be daunting, but I do think if you just take it step by step, and you know, and with your story, if you're unsure about it, you know, I think there was a question about whether you can send it in as a sort of a pre-assessment. Do that pre-assessment with your community. Do that with your friends. Pitch your story to them over dinner. Pitch your story to your mum. Just stress test that idea and see how people are receiving it. See if there's anything they want to contribute and offer. So take in all of that feedback from the community that you have, and from the team you're applying with, of course.
Thanks, Lawani. Caius, anything in summary?
No, I just look forward to being surprised.
Great. Me too. I will just add to what Lawani said. Please ask questions before February 24th, though, the closing date, because we will be busy on that date. So you've got about 3 weeks before that application's closed. But again, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope we got to your questions, and if not, feel free to email through. Look forward to seeing your applications, and this, as I said, will be available on the website to watch probably from later today or tomorrow. Thank you, Lawani. Thank you, Caius. Thank you, Auslan Stage Left. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.